Tell me, how does this make you feel? What thoughts come to your head when you see this and hear this? Would you associate this with loneliness? Does it feel familiar? Does it feel uncomfortable? Do you feel like you relate to it? Do you feel like enticed by it? Do you want to be where that is?
Kendrick? Kendrick?
See, the world is a lonely place. Yet you think it wouldn't be, considering how much we have to offer in this small little rock we're on. Everything from culture, people, distractions, ambitions, things we love, music, food, everything. Even all the advertisements and the noise from the cities and cars on the road and people and everything. Yet, it becomes uncomfortably apparent that when you kind of sit in silence, when you have no distractions, nobody to call because everyone's busy, nobody who's messaging you, no phone, no noise because maybe the time of day it is, or maybe you're in a place that's far away from the busy city life or wherever is busy. You kind of just sit there in silence. And this is the part where most people either feel an intense amount of loneliness or feel a tense amount of peace. And it's weird because you'd think that these situations wouldn't be as peaceful or lonely as you might think. And I always thought that was an interesting thing. So I kind of started asking myself, why do you feel lonely when you sit in silence? Or more importantly, why do I sometimes feel so happy in silence, but also feel so alone in silence? There's a couple of different ways we can look at it. And the reason I chose to name the video, "The World is a Lonely Place," is not specifically to outline loneliness as bad. Because there are times when loneliness can be therapeutic. It can be necessary. Kind of a comforting solitude, if you will. Yet there's also times when the loneliness starts to eat away at you. You start to become, too enticed by it. You start to feel like, the world is coming at you. You feel paranoid. You feel like you're being watched. You feel like, you just feel uncomfortable. And I feel like in those moments of loneliness, you start to realize how little matters. And not in a sense of life, but in a sense of all of these opinions, all of this noise that's in our heads, and all of this noise that's all around. You start to think, maybe it's not as bad as I thought it was. Only for you to go home or go back to wherever, to walk back into that noisy place and forget all about it. Throughout life, we have these experiences. I like to call them enlightened experiences. When you realize something, you realize the importance of one thing that is more important than all these other things you focus on, yet you seem to forget how important it is as time moves on because it just slips your mind. You just can't stay focused on that. One of the best examples is caring about what other people think, or realizing how bad it is to spend so much time staring at a phone or device. Yet you also realize phone and devices are so ingrained in your everyday life, you use a phone for practically everything. I mean, not to be that guy, but you use your phone for your banking, you use your phone for music, you use your phone for distractions, you use your phone for maps, you use your phone to respond to work messages, work calls. If you were to just get rid of the phone, then how would you be able to move on with life? Because you need it for this and that, and then stop. Think about it. How much would you use your phone if the only purpose of it was just to send a text or call somebody? Probably not as much as you are now. Would you still be on the phone with someone for an odd amount of hours? Yeah. Would you still spam text a bunch of people or play that one snake game on your Nokia? Definitely. However, would your entire world be revolved around it? I would hope not. Or at least for most people, you wouldn't. And I think the answer to my question, I guess kind of in a way, lies in the phone. Because luckily for me, when I was growing up, I was one of the last, groups of people, or I guess generation of people, who grew up in a phoneless environment. You know, I didn't have a phone, like a proper phone, until I was like 14, and I didn't have social media until I was like 15, 16. So even though that's still pretty young, like I wasn't on no Reels or TikTok. I was on YouTube. You know, I was watching what people consider nostalgic now. Yet, you know, I don't look back at those times as brain rotting and being obsessive and making my life revolve around the phone. I still went outside and played. You know, I was embracing the silence. You know, I use this silence as ideas, and I still do that. Yet, the way I approach it is different. And it's hard to explain it. You know, I don't have all the answers, but when I was a young kid, I used to play outside with toys, or I used to walk around my garden with like a lightsaber, and I would like fight a brick wall, thinking I was like Anakin Skywalker. It's stuff like that. When you're a kid, you think of these things. You know, you don't have fear. You don't fear silence and loneliness. You embrace it and you make something out of it. Yet nowadays, everybody's trying to escape that loneliness because I think we're no longer comfortable with being in our own environment, having to address our own feelings, emotions, anxiety. And overall, we just start calling it loneliness when really, it's just something you've always known. You know, people like to say, things can be more of a monster, or I guess more of a shadow than it actually being a monster. I think I'm sure there's a quote about, you know, like a little stuffed animal looking like a monster as a shadow, but in reality it's such a small and insignificant thing, yet it never feels that way. I feel as if the reason it entices us and makes us want to escape it so much is because we're so programmed now to escape it, to deny its existence when it eventually rolls back around, because it always will. You either embrace it or you fear it. It either becomes that little plusher in the corner of the room, or the massive monster shadow on your wall at 3 a.m. That's really what I mean by the world being lonely. Because the world being a lonely place isn't necessarily a good or bad thing, because it's always going to be an issue with both. And I feel like that ideology applies to everything in life. There's always going to be a negative and a positive. There's never going to be one perfect thing. So yes, you can choose to follow one or the other, but as long as you understand there are going to be times of isolation and loneliness where you resent it and you fear it, there are going to be times when you appreciate the quietness. Let's take sitting on a bench in a park with nothing happening, just birds, beautiful sunny day. Although you might be in a period of absolute isolation and loneliness, at your lowest point when nobody's around because everyone's too busy, there's no distractions, there's nothing. In that moment, you'll have a feeling, and that feeling will either be an intense amount of joy from finally being away from all the noise, or an intense amount of awkwardness, maybe an anxiety, a feeling that you're lacking or missing on something. Maybe a fear of missing out's a better way of putting it. You'll feel as if you're lonely and there's no one in the world that cares about you, and there's no reason for you to be here, and you should go back and do this, or you should keep yourself busy and this and that. But then when the silence comes around, you address stuff. You finally acknowledge the way you've been feeling. You acknowledge those thoughts you've been pushing off. You think about things. And if you spend a lot of time not thinking about things and pushing it away, then I think you're going to be the person who feels the most lonely in those moments. Yet if you're always thinking about things and worrying about them, that moment of complete silence in the same place as you would have felt that loneliness, it becomes a joyous moment where you sit there and you really embrace how beautiful life is. You know, you think of all the grass being green and the way that the sun is shining, how there's no clouds in the sky, how you have no responsibilities in that moment in time. You know, it's a peaceful thing, and we take that thing for granted. The fact that you could walk there or drive there or bicycle there or however you got there, and you were able to be there, present in that moment. These are the type of things you might be thinking. Or you might even just be like, it's a nice day today, I want to sit outside, and enjoy that kind of small period that you have to yourself. Yet, if you choose to not acknowledge things, you end up really resenting that time. Instead of valuing it for what it is, you look at it so negatively. Like, oh, I should be spending my life doing this, or I should be working hard, or I should be doing this. You start to resent those lonely moments of isolation. So in a way, the world is a lonely place. Because you're either lonely on a path of self-destruction, or you're on a path of trying to understand why the silence is so good. But hey, It's just something to think about. If you did enjoy this video, please consider liking and subscribing. I appreciate all your support, and it's just been amazing to see all you guys commenting your stories and showing so much love and support, so I really appreciate it. I'll hopefully see you in the next one.